Victor Wembanyama, his Spurs have beat OKC 3 times in a row. Now, on Polymarket, the Spurs right now have a 12% chance to make it out of the West. You look at the Western Conference champion percentage wise, OKC still has the most percentage to make it to the out of the West, 59%. Denver's number 2 at 13%. San Antonio has now jumped over the Rockets, the Lakers, the Timberwolves. Really, they have separated themselves from the beginning of the season, and this is how the graph looks like right now. Do you guys agree with that? That San Antonio has one of the 3 best chances to make it out of the Western Conference?
I'll go first. Yes, they do. And the reason why they do is because they have the best rim protector in all of basketball. Now, when you go up against Denver, it's different than going up against OKC. Denver would cause problems for the Spurs because they have a legit interior presence that can go up against Victor and get his. With Oklahoma City, when you have a guy like Victor that is protecting the paint as thoroughly and as elite as he is, when you do not have that elite interior presence that has the size, that has the strength to go up against Vic, things become a lot more difficult. They also, yes, we know Oklahoma City to be a solid shooting team, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't find myself buying all in on their supporting cast 3-point shooting. Like, yes, they have some guys that can shoot the basketball, but their great defenders aren't elite shooters. And their really strong shooters are not the greatest defenders. When you go up against the Spurs, you need a strong presence. That's why it's so imperative that Chet Holmgren continues to develop and really becomes that force. And another reason why I think Victor has made it personal between him and him, because him and Chet, because he understands that that's the guy that he knows that he has to shut down for years to come, because Oklahoma City's not going to go anywhere. But because Vic is such a dominant force and because these guys don't have that interior presence, I think they can give Oklahoma City a legitimate series, and they do have a legitimate shot to continue to move on and come out of the Western Conference, so long as they're opposite side of Denver. Because Victor against Jokic is simply just the best offensive force that we've seen in a good amount of times. And I think that no matter who he goes up against, he will get his. As great as Victor is defensively, the best defender I think I've ever seen with my 2 eyes. It's just Jokic has such a finesse and a elite presence to his game, where with his playmaking, with his finishing ability, that's something that they have that Oklahoma City simply does not. So I get it. Polymark has the right idea. The Spurs being 3-0 against them, it is because of OKC's lack of rim presence and strength, real physical ability to go out there and put up a guy up against Victor Wembanyama. He's simply way too dynamic of a defender, as opposed to the other team that I would give credit. It's the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good things. Also, the fact that San Antonio has 3 guys that can get 2 feet in the paint, I think that's like super important. Like, they have 3 guys that can consistently beat multiple defenders and penetrate the rim. Stephon Castle, the leap he's made in his game this year, and Dells, we've been here, Dells. But just the him and then Dylan Harper being as advanced as he is as a rookie, and then Fox has been so steady, consistent for you as an all-star, all-NBA player, it creates a lot of problems. Now, I do think with San Antonio, and you mentioned it, Drew, it's a lot about matchups. I think matchups are super important, especially for the top end teams. I would like for San Antonio, if they can move off those Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes guys. I don't think I trust those guys in the long run. As for OKC, I do think, they're streaky. They've never been this elite 3-point shooter team. I think they've always been this streaky 3-point shooting team. Like, you're still going to sag off Lou Dortz no matter their percentages. You're still going to sag off Caruso. You can't really play your dominant shooters like Wiggins and Isaiah Joe because they're not good defenders. And when they play up against San Antonio, you got a lot of guys that could defend. Fox is a positive defender when he's locked in. Castle's a really good one-on-one defender. And then you have Wemby back there. They can't really get into the paint like they want to. And then that mid-range game, if it's not SGA creating, they've been having a hard time this year because J-Dub hasn't been his lately self. He hasn't gotten to his groove yet. But I think it makes sense. I think especially with, Houston before that W yesterday, they was kind of falling down the cliff, and you can see kind of their fourth quarter struggles, their crunch time situations, and their lack of shooting. And then other teams like Minnesota, they just still lack a point guard. But it's a tricky avenue because we watched last year. I was one of the guys that fell into the trap where Minnesota gave OKC hell in the regular season, and then you watched in the playoffs, they kind of reversed and flipped the switch, and OKC dominated them. I think it's a little different because obviously they have Wemby, they have a mismatch problem, but OKC is a team that I wouldn't sit on their hands. I would definitely try to, make just one move, nothing too crazy. You don't need a superstar. I just think you need a more reliable role player as opposed to these other guys. But I think right now with the way the league is trending and the way they've been playing, I think it's fair to put them number 3.
Yeah, I mean the biggest weakness right now for OKC is the same weakness as last year. It's the shooting. And we saw last year Caruso, Lou Dort. Those are the two players you're going to be playing off of, right? Like Wemby is guarding Caruso. He starts off whatever 0 for 10 from this game, 0 for 6 from 3, whatever it was.
Broke my heart.
And last season, Dort was a 40% three-point shooter. Even though you're not respecting him, like you said, Riv, he's still someone that was hitting that 40% clip last year. He's down to 30%. Caruso is around 36, 37% last year. He's 30, 29% this season. So two of their, the shooters they didn't respect last year, who were hitting a majority of their shots, are super cold right now. And then you get in games like these where if Caruso is going to be taking 10 shots in the first half and missing all 10, that just means Wemby isn't going to respect him more. He's going to be able to sit in the paint. He's going to be able to move all over and do the Wembanyama things that we've seen him do so far in his career. So yeah, the OKC's problem is still the same. It's just last year, it really did come down to the wire. 7-game series with the Pacers. They had some games that were like J-Dub goes crazy, but all in all, I still think the weakness last year's is the same as this year. It's just the shooting around their guys. It just hasn't been as consistent as it was last season. With that being said, when they were like 24-1, it was kind of hard to see that because they were winning every single game. And we're up here talking about, can they potentially win the most games in NBA history? And where's Ring Shea and all this other stuff. So it almost blinded us, I think, for a minute that this team does have flaws. Even though they won the championship, they should still be favored. The Spurs have shown, at least in the regular season, like they'll get a run for their money. The guard play they have, all three of them. De'Aaron Fox, who's been a little slow recently, but we know how great De'Aaron Fox was, and he was amazing yesterday. Castle, Harper, the pressure they can put on the rim, the jump shooting that you have with some of those guys too. It's a really good team, but it doesn't feel like it's ready for that jump yet, unless Wemby is really at that level where he could just completely take over a playoff series and put himself in best in the world conversation, which he has the talent to do. It feels like a stretch for this team to go from not in the playoffs entirely and all of a sudden top 2 seed, you go to the finals. That's something that historically doesn't happen. But when you have an alien like this, it's possible.
There's really no team that I see being on the Spurs level outside of really Denver and OKC. I feel like the Spurs have put themselves in that tier. I think that they have a lot of depth and they could take advantage of what Houston does, although I think that would be a really good series. I don't think the Lakers have the athletes for it, and then everybody else in the West, good luck. San Antonio just proved how great they are. They've beat OKC 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and the last 2 times have been blowouts. They've beat them by double digits each time, and they have had clear control of the game, and that has been with Wemby on a minutes restriction. He didn't even start on Christmas Day against OKC. It was Luke Cornett. He played less than 30 minutes, and they were still able to win the game. And it was really a combination, just everybody doing their part. I think OKC, the shooting has been lackluster. Last year in the playoffs, they were 11th out of 14 teams in three-point percentage. So they haven't been able to shoot consistently and reliably, even last postseason. And we know that the year before that, they lost to Dallas because of that exact reason. They couldn't hit their open three-point shots. But San Antonio has the athletes and the depth to match what OKC does. And we are seeing De'Aaron Fox and that guard play being huge for them, because if Fox is on the bench or Castle's on the bench, then Harper can sub in and he can consistently run that offense and keep defenses on their toes. But I think a big part of San Antonio just being able to take advantage of OKC in a way that they have is that offensively, OKC has dropped off a cliff when they've played the Spurs. They essentially go from averaging like 120 plus points per game to less than 110 points per game. And that's in large part to what you're talking about, is that Wemby sags off a shooter, whether it's Lou Dort or Caruso, he sags off the weakest shooter. And when you have him roaming and controlling the paint, much like what we saw in the Dallas series 2 seasons ago, where they would funnel Shea and J-Dub into help, it really stalls up OKC's offense, and it plays right into the hands of the defense and the type of shots that they want you to take. So I think San Antonio has had a really sound game plan. I think they have all the talent to go on a deep playoff run this year, and I don't see any reason why they can't do it. Like you're talking about Wemby, like he has to prove it, but I think Wemby he'll play really well in the playoffs.
I agree. He
And
will.
if we
It's everybody
see
else.
the type of leap from San Antonio to go from a team out of the playoffs to now a top 3 team in the West, the second team in the West record wise, like I think these players only continue to improve throughout the season, and by the playoffs they could be ready. They could be ready.
Yeah, it's
But
just
that's
it's
better.
yeah, it's just like do you trust the Stephon Casting shooting in the playoffs? That's going to be a tricky thing. Like I know he's able to get into the paint and all that stuff, but you know like we always say in the playoffs, the whistle gets tighter. You know everything starts to become that half court offense. Do you trust Harrison Barnes when the lights are bright? Absolutely, the fuck not. You don't. Been proven that. Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Luke Cornett in a playoff series in drop.
Cornette, I'm cool with.
In drop coverage and stuff like that. Like
Okay.
that's the tricky things. You know, it's like San Antonio, OKC, they played 3 times in the last 2 weeks. San Antonio's got their number. Now you walk into a playoff series, a ton more time to prepare, you know, a ton of more time to just focus on that one opponent. You know, how does that look? That's why I think San Antonio, I think they should probably capitalize and make a move. You know, nothing groundbreaking. You know, I've seen that Malik Monk was available and stuff like that, or guys like Corey Kispert, like just another knockdown shooter. Because even a guy like Devin Vassell, you know, he's streaky. He's a good player, but he's an extremely streaky player. You know, so it's OKC also has streaky players. So I don't want to say like it's just a San Antonio thing. And they, you know, the method is out to guard OKC. It's just hard to do when these non-shooters are hitting their 3-point shots, and then when they're able defensively. And what we've noticed from this team too is they're not able to get to the line as much as they want to against a team like San Antonio, and that's also been another thing that's been hindering their offense. So I think it's a tricky slope.
What were you gonna say, Drew?
I just think that for the Spurs, it's been a trend over these last few years where you have this young star with these young pieces around this superstar, and very quickly they rise up. We saw it with OKC 2 years ago. We saw it with the Rockets last year. And now this year, it's the Spurs. It's one thing that those 3 teams have in common, and that's defense. Defense can carry you in the regular season to a high seed. The Spurs just so happen to have the best defender in the world. So for that, I don't have concerns with them finishing out the season strong. God willing, Victor Wembanyama is able to stay healthy and he's able to finish the season out strong. Then he should accrue almost every single accolade that there is to offer him in this game. The defense can translate, but Riv, I think what you're saying is an excellent point. The offense is what gives you the concern with the Spurs down the stretch in the postseason. But that's when you ask Victor Wembanyama to take that leap and show that there are levels to this, that you are in this class that you deserve to be in with the best in the world conversation. But then it comes on to the Foxes. We brought you in here for a reason. Dylan Harper, this is rookie season. You can only ask so much of a rookie, but this kid, what he's done, an immediate impact he's made for the San Antonio Spurs' offense, it can't be understated. He looks like a vet in year 1, and this is a guy who's missed time this season as well. He just looks so ready for the moment as well. You see the growth in Stephon Castle. These young cats, the shooting is the concern, but with the athleticism, the amount that carries over to the defensive side of the ball, that's what should give you some peace of mind with this team.
Do you feel like the 3-0 against them in the regular season is just like an obscure number? Like they've owned them in the regular season, but it has some hint of it's just a regular season, so OKC is not taking it as hard as they take it, obviously, in a playoff series. And in the playoffs, OKC is going to showcase why they're so much better.
No, they did not take it lightly. You see how much it means to Vic. Maybe that's the one side of things. That's nonsense. You see the energy that is brought to both sides. The Spurs simply have given belt the last 2 times that they've matched up. This isn't
so basically you think that if they
one-sided rivalry.
So you think in the playoffs the Spurs will beat OKC?
It's hard for me to to doubt the defense that the Spurs have shown me, because when Vic's on the floor, they make it so impossible for OKC to get to the rim. And then you're just trusting their shooters. That's tough for me to say right now. The defense for OKC is there too. That goes undeniably. That's an obvious fact. But with the size that Victor allows, the shooting that Victor allows, that's forcing the big to obviously come out of the paint as well. And then you have guys like Fox, Castle, Dylan Harper that can get downhill and score at the basket. I like the Spurs, man. The one team that concerns me with the Spurs, like I mentioned, is Denver, because they have that force on the inside. That is Nikola Jokic. OKC, if they had shooting, legitimate shooting, it'd be a no-brainer, because they legitimately have everything else.
It's tough because history has shown, we've seen things like this happen where, we had Phoenix beating Minnesota 3 or 4 times in the regular season. Minnesota flipped it and destroyed them in the playoffs. I remember 2022, Golden State lost every regular season matchup to the teams they played in the playoffs. Denver beat them 3 times. Dallas beat them, I think, twice. Memphis beat them 3 times. And they proceeded to go into the playoffs and beat all those teams. So some teams just flip a switch. Some teams have that DNA. I think OKC, they just won a championship last year. So you give them that grace of the know when to turn it on. But I think they took it serious. I want to say that. I think for the most part, they took it serious. I think they definitely talked about wanting the record, talked about
in-season tournament, they took serious.
Yeah, and I think they just, they got overwhelmed and the Spurs beat their ass. Now, you give them that grace to adjust and to figure out what there is to fix come playoff time when they do eventually, if they do, match up. And I think that's going to be, the conversations. But, I think right now, Spurs came, they surprised them, beat them in damn near at their home, a neutral site, and then at home. So they beat them everywhere. But I do think you still give OKC a little bit of an edge because, championship team, playoff experience, all that nonsense.
Yeah, I think you're hoping OKC, though, is looking at the last champion to say, it's been damn near a decade since someone went back-to-back. And OKC deserves the benefit of the doubt here. But it's also, I was feeling the same way last year with Boston, where it's like these regular season games mean a lot to these other teams. To you, not so much, because you are coming off that championship. In the regular season, you're almost just saying, okay, we know what really matters once we get to the playoffs, right? Once we're down 1-0, okay. Once it's 2-1, okay. That's when you start feeling some pressure once you're at least coming off the championship. So I feel like that's where OKC is right now, where obviously you want to be able to beat the Spurs, but you have to have the confidence that, listen, we just kind of, ran through the West, this past, I know you went to 7 Denver, but everyone else, we handled pretty nicely. The Spurs look good. They're a young team, but we're the champions. You know what I mean? Like, SJ's the MVP and arguably the best player in the world. So you got to have all of the confidence going into it. But San Antonio having, I don't want to say an underdog mentality, because Victor does not feel like an underdog and he doesn't present himself that way. But just, I think, the national view of the team, because outside of Vic, like we've been saying, what other of these guys do you trust? It could be dangerous because you're playing with house money if you're the Spurs. What Drew said is right, though, because we have seen the last few years these young teams make the leap, but we haven't seen them make the ultra leap, right? Like, they go from not making the playoffs to the playoffs. The Thunder win a playoff series, but it took the Thunder multiple playoffs to get to the finals, right? The Rockets are first-round exit last year. So I still see the Spurs in that light, but they feel like they have more upside than those previous teams because they have real talent with the guy that's playing at, a top 5, top 3 level.